Welcome to the Smith of Chicago, Illinois, nonprofit home video and artwork creations. In this particular video, we'll be looking at area view land surface images of the northeast African continent Arabian land surface. This is before the flood of Noah, before the water changed the surface of the northeast African continent. And as we see this northeast African continent as viewed with satellite imagery from outer space, we're looking at the elongated headed Old Testament glowing circle of wheel in the wheel like UFO, Alien 7 and Alien 5. So this is where we rediscovered that the big black oval shaped eyes, 4 feet tall, 3 fingers and one thumb on each hand, alien Elohim is the original extraterrestrials that existed within our solar system before they created the book of Genesis 1:26, first elongated headed African Adam. Out of the two creations on the surface of planet Earth, we see Genesis 1:26 as the first elongated headed African Adamic race that no longer exists upon the surface of planet Earth. Now, when we look at the normal-headed shaped African Adamic race, such as you and me and the rest of the world, we see that the same Sphinx of ancient Judaism, if we draw 12 horizontal white lines across the African continent from south to north and view it with satellite imagery, we will see nothing but African tribes living in each of the 12 horizontal land surface African continent lines. This brings us to the term in which I call the original 12 African continent tribes, in which was illegally renamed into the 12 sons of Jacob in the book of Psalms, 105th chapter, 23rd verse, entering into ancient Egypt and starting ancient Judaism. As we soon discover that the Google map image of the area view northeast African continent 11 and 12 area view geographic land surface line area reveals an Isaiah 19:19 gives a pyramid of Ezra 1st chapter 3rd verse, land of Judah. So Judea is the 11th line, whereas the Jerusalem is the 12th line. But if you go to the world map today and try to locate the black African, Islamic, Aramaic, Dead Sea Scrolls speaking line things of ancient Judaism, okay, we should see Judea under Jerusalem on the globe map. But that's not what we're looking at today. We're looking at the European Gentile nations as English pilgrims that originally started the early United States government in black hats, coats, and tights and shoes as English pilgrims. As their 13 colonies started the early United States government, the same dress code we see attacking Judea and Jerusalem. So this is where the 10 horns of Daniel, rough gold is the king of Greece here, who in the latter times of his kingdom he should stretch forth his hands to conquer the biblical holy land areas of Judea and Jerusalem. So when we look at European faced Israelites in black hats, coats, and tights, bobbing their head up and down at the African Sphinx 11 and 1881 Sphinx that we see at the back of the El Sacramento wall area. This black African Sphinx that was transported above the atmospheric region of planet Earth by the 4 feet tall, big black oval shaped eyes, elongated here, the Old Testament glowing circle of wheel in the wheel like UFO aliens. Okay, the European Gentile nation took over the 11 and 12 area view African continent geographic land surface area of Judea and Jerusalem. So as we see that the pyramids were placed upon the back of the American dollar bill, but in theological racism, the same black hats, coats, tights, and shoes wearing English pilgrim that started the early United States government and invaded Judea and Jerusalem as European faced Israelites. They placed the pyramids on the back of the dollar bill, but not the black African couching Ethiopian lion things of Genesis 49 chapter and 8 verse. This was the original origin of the 1609 transatlantic slave trade. As we now see that the African or Ethiopian Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls speaking descendant of the Sphinx 11 of ancient Judaism were shipped in English trading ships that left Europe into America as slaves. And this is what we must tell our children today, that the Negro in America was shipped from the original 12 African continent tribes in English trading ships. So the same black hat coat, tight shoes, and wearing dress code of the English pilgrim is what we now see as the dress code of the European faith false Israelites or Jews. The word Judah, as we look at the globe map, do not appear under Jerusalem. So this is a form of historical and theological racism in which the American government is imposing on 8-year-olds and high school goers and college school classes. When we look at theologically and archaeologically and geographically incorrect social structure imposed upon the American society. So every English book is in English and it's telling you about the European Gentile nation as the 10 horns of Daniel, biblical lie or theological lie, and even astronomical lie. As we go back to the 4 feet tall, big black oval shaped eye, H2925, glowing Old Testament will in the wood like U.F.O aliens, we're looking at aliens that have no penis between their legs. In fact, they had smooth skin there where a woman's vagina would be. This would place them out of the 400-year-old mistranslated King James Bible false man-based Lord God world religions category, whereas the European nations that took over Africa's ancient Sphinx of Judea and Jerusalem, 11 and 12 geographic land surface line, they are illegally uplifting the false Lord God image of Jesus and Jehovah in the King James Bible and all across the American school and classrooms. So this false Lord God image of Jesus and Jehovah, if you raise up the white robe of Jesus, you will see that he has a penis. You raise up the bearded old man image of Jehovah white robe, you see that he has a penis. This automatically places the European Gentile nations that flew to the 11 and 12 Arab geographic African continent land surface line of Judea and Jerusalem to study the Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls. So the white man's story in the English Bible is a 66-book page Bible story, which is incorrect when it comes to archaeology, theology, and geography. As we now see that the false man-based Lord God world religion, in which the Bible is now focusing on, as a result of their takeover in Black Hats, Coats, and Ties, the English Pilgrim system, originally started the early United States government. So when they took over Giza, the Isaiah 1919 Giza Pyramid, in Black Hats, Coats, and Ties, we're talking about Jews. The word Judah was illegally renamed to Jew. The 12 sons of Jacob, in which the Sphinx in front of the Al-Sacramah in the back wall area generated by building structures, small building structures, rooms. So this black man's face upon a lion's body in front of the Giza Pyramid in Northeast Africa was denied in the theological racism of the European Gentile nations. So this would be the origin of the transatlantic slave trade. So as the descendants of the lion Sphinx ship, this is the Ethiopian Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls speaking children in the 11 and 12 Arab Northeast African continent land surface line area. So this is where we rediscovered that the Negro in America is not being told his true 12 African continent tribes history in the Bible. In fact, it was concealed 400 years ago in 1611 by the King James of England, as he appointed 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars to fly to travel to the Judea and Jerusalem. Now on the globe map, they studied this 11 and 12 geographic Sphinx 11, the black man's face upon a lion's body, in which we now see in front of the Isaiah 1919 Giza Pyramid. So they studied the Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls that were found in the cave, the Qumran cave, right? And so the white man's lie, or the European Gentile nations lie that took over Judea and Jerusalem, actually started the early United States government as English pilgrims and trading ships from Europe. So the 13 colonies that in America was actually the 10 horns of Daniel, peoples of the 10 horns of Daniel, or the 10 European Gentile nations. So if we see a European-faced Israelite in black hats, coats, and tights, it's the same dress code in which the English pilgrims of the 10 horns of Daniel, or 10 European Gentile nations, was wearing as they got off the English trading ships and started the early 13 colonies. So their decision to place the African pyramids on the back of the dollar bill, but not the African Sphinx of Genesis 49 chapter 8 verse, the Chaldean lion Sphinx of the tribe of Judah. This was a theologically racist move of the kings and queens of Europe that took over Africa's 11 and 12 Eru geographic land surface line, where we see Judea and Jerusalem. Now, this led up to the 1609 transatlantic slave trade, as descendants of the Sphinx 11 of ancient Judea and Jerusalem, or the Ethiopian lion Sphinx, was shipped off in English trading ships into America, Jamaica, Jamestown, Virginia, and all around the world as slaves. So this is why when people or ministers talk about America is not mentioned in the Bible, I tell them, oh yes it is. See, when the Bible speaks of, the mistranslated King James Bible speaks of the rough gold is the king of Grecia, and the great horn between his eyes, the first king, right? And in the latter times of his kingdom, he shall stretch forth his hand to conquer the 11th and 12th geographic Northeast African continent, holy land surface area of Judea and Jerusalem. So who was ruling Judea and Jerusalem? 12 African continent tribes. This is the black African Sphinx, in which we now see in front of the Isaiah 19:19 Giza pyramid. A black man facing a lion body. And so, when we say America is not in the Bible, it's referred to as the 10 horns of Daniel, emerging out of Greece, Rome. So the Philistines, so if we throw the Philistines, the Greeks, and the Romans in one big bag back to Europe, we will see the 10 horns of Daniel. Okay. Now you say, well, why is the 10 horns of Daniel referred to as the European Gentile nations that started the early United States government? Well, think about it. They are Gentile nations because they do not carry the same belief as the original 12 African continent tribes. You say, oh, so what was their belief? Well, if you look at the blue basketball-shaped globe map, you put the African continent in the center. You draw 12 horizontal white lines from South Africa to North Africa. Then look at it with satellite imagery. You're going to see nothing but African tribes living in each of the 12 African continent land surface lines. And which brings us back to the terminology which I call the original 12 African continent tribes, in which was ruled over by Genesis 49 chapter 8 verse, so-called fourth son of Jacob. But this fourth son of Jacob in the mistranslated King James Bible is actually the black man's face upon the lion's body, in which we now see in front of the Isaiah 19:19 Giza pyramid. So as we look at this original 12 African continent tribes, land surface image in Northeast Africa is viewed with satellite imagery. So we're looking at the 11th line from outer space, land surface line, whereas we see a yellow desert, huge triangular land surface area that has a dark, shadowy U shapes in the center as a face. So this is the Sphinx 11 of Judea and Jerusalem. So Ezra, E-Z-R-A in the Bible, it tells us, let us go up to Jerusalem, which is located in the land of Judah, and build a house to the Lord God of Jacob. He said, wait a minute. You mean tell me Jerusalem is located in Judea? So Judea is the capital of Jerusalem. Right. So if you go to the world map today, since the European Gentile nation took over Africa, Giza and Gaza, remember on the news media you see Giza, the black man's face upon the lion's body in Northeast Africa, 11th geographic land surface line. But then if you cross from Giza, you're going into Gaza, the Gaza Strip. And then from Gaza you're into Jerusalem. So if you look at the world map, or put this on a blackboard for your school children, you would say that the 11th and 12th line is viewed from outer space in geography with satellite imagery. And so when we do this, you're going to see my video that the area viewed 11th line upon the African continent is the Isaiah 19:19 Giza pyramid. But way before we zoom into those pyramids, where we see a black man's face in front of the lion, upon the lion's body, we are looking at Earth, the blue basketball-shaped Earth, and the huge image of the African continent in the middle of the blue basketball-shaped Earth. Now, if we're seeing this from outer space in a satellite, with satellite imagery, or from a space shuttle, we're going to immediately zoom into the 11th geographic land surface line. Now the 12th line is you fall off the North African continent to the water. That's what Jerusalem is. That little V-shaped piece of land attached to the real Egyptian yellow, huge desert triangular representation of a headdress. So if we're looking at the 11th line from outer space, we're going to see a huge desert yellow sand triangle representing the headdress. And in the center, we see a dark shadowy U representing the face. Alright, now, when we look at the alien 2 over the Sphinx 11, you say, who is that? That's the 4 feet tall, big black oval-shaped eyes, Old Testament glowing, willing and will, like U.F.O alien Elohim of the 12 African continent tribe, in which the European Gentile nation that started the early United States government lied about in theological racism, which led up to the 1609 transatlantic slave trade. Well, the original Ethiopians, speaking of Sphinx 2 and Sphinx 11 and Sphinx 1881, the black man origin of ancient Judea and Jerusalem, okay, these descendants around the pyramids in Giza, Gaza, and Judea and Jerusalem were shipped in English trading ships into America, Jamestown, Virginia, to pick cotton. So this is the Kunta Kinte picked that cotton for slavery imposed upon the descendants in the 11th and 12th Northeast African continent geographic land surface line area of Judea and Jerusalem. So the pyramids was placed on the back of the Bible as a trophy by the 10 horns of Daniel or the European Gentile nation. So who do we call these people? We call them European white-faced Americans. So, okay, so what did they do? They had theological racism against Northeast Africa. Sphinx in front of the Giza pyramid led them to change the name of the 12th African continent tribe 400 years ago in 1611. Whereas the King James of England that sent 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars to Judea and Jerusalem, that's the 11th and 12th area Northeast continent land surface area. So they studied the Islamic Aramaic DHEADED scroll language of the black African Sphinx, okay, of the tribe of Judah. And after reading this and looking at this, now this is 400 years ago, we see a group of the 10 horns of Daniel as the 10 European Gentile nations. So we're talking about people in Europe rewriting the African continent history illegally. So if you open up the Bible now, and you trying to read about the 12th African continent tribe from South Africa to North, in which the black man faced upon a lion's body, in which we now see in front of the Isaiah 1919 Giza pyramids ruled over, you're going to be shocked. You say what? Because the 12th African continent tribes was illegally renamed into the 12 sons of Jacob. Then a second renaming of the 12 sons of Jacob into the 12 tribes of Israel completely wiped out or concealed the glory of the black man's face, in which we now see upon a lion's body, as he's couched down in front of the Isaiah 1919 Giza pyramids. So as we rediscovered that the biblical couching Ethiopian lion Sphinx of ancient Judaism, 11th geographic Isaiah 1919 Giza pyramid land surface line, is connected to by the real Egyptian headdress in which we see from outer space. So as we view the 11th area view Northeast African continent, huge desert yellow sand triangle. Now this is where it has a central U. Way before we zoom in with satellite imagery into Northeast Africa 11th geographic land surface area where the Isaiah 1919 Giza pyramids are located. You follow me now? Okay, so if we go back and look at this 11th line from outer space, we're going to see a black man's face as the lion thinks of the tribe of Judah within the desert sand high yellow triangular area. Land surface triangular area. So now if we say, okay, now what about before the flood of Noah? Well, remember, if you turn that Sphinx 11 face, in which I'm posting on my video, I posted on Facebook and YouTube. All you need to do is type in Nibiru Temple Mount alien on your cell phones, and all those images are immediately come up. How this 4 feet tall, big black oval-shaped eye alien 7, in which we now see as we have reviewed the Arabian land surface. So this is why when we see the same alien in South Africa that appears in North Africa, Arabian land surface. So we're talking about the rediscovering the true holy Mount Sinai. Remember, the traditional Mount Sinai is crossing in the 11th line area, right? From Africa across the Red Sea. Well, It's in the middle of the V-shaped piece of land, not the huge V-shaped piece of land, which we call Arabia today. In fact, in the Old Testament, in ancient times, before Arabia separated from the Northeast African continent, it was a part of the Northeast African continent, and the Red Sea was a very thin river. So whereas the Bible was talking about the 12 sons of Jacob entering into ancient Egypt in the book of Psalms, 105th chapter, 23rd verse, and starting ancient Judaism, this is a concealing of the true facts as it relates to the black men and the aliens that transported the African things above the atmospheric reaches of planet Earth. In Ezekiel's Old Testament, glowing wood in the world like circular U.F.Os. So this will be the Allah of the Things to Jabalallawz era. So it's a coincidence that the word Allah, Wakba, is connected to Allah Jabalallawz. You say, okay, so what is this ALLAWZ? Well, remember, ALLAWZ. So you say, okay, so if we say turn to ALLAWZ, A-L-L-A, Allah, and Waz, W-Z. Instead of the Z, now we're talking about the Northeast African continent, Red Sea area, where we see the separated east coastline of Africa, we call Arabia today. But before the flood of Noah, in ancient times, we're talking about one huge African continent. So if we try to say, what is in JABAL, J-A-B-A-L, the Northeast African continent, across the Red Sea, this is a coastline of Arabia. And what is the name? Jabalallawz. Okay, and so who's the people in Mecca or Arabia calling God? They were calling him Allah or Allah Wakba. So if we put it on a blank sheet of paper or a blackboard, and so you say, okay, Allah and Wa, W-A, Wa, Allah Wakba, Allah Wakba. So you say that's what the ancient Europeans in white robes is calling God in Arabia. I say they ancient Europeans in white robes. Remember, because before we called this modern Arabia, it was a part of ancient Africa. So if we look at the Sphinx being the ruler of Genesis 2:7, normal 12 African continent tribes. You get it? Before the 12 African continent tribes by the European Gentile nations, or the 10 horns of Daniel, that started the early United States government and placed the pyramids on the back of the bill as a trophy, but not the face of the Sphinx. This is pure theological racism, and they laid up to the 1609 transatlantic slave trade. You follow me now? Okay, so let's go back to Allah Wakba and Allah Waz. So you say, if you put A in front of Z, you have two names. You have Allah Waz, Allah Wa, or Allah Wakba. So you say, okay, so Allah Waz is where the true Mount Sinai is in Northeast Arabia. But looking at the globe map now, the traditional Mount Sinai is in the, if you draw 12 lines across African continent from south to north, the Sphinx, Giza pyramids, a black man facing on a light body is in the 11th Arab view geographic LANDSURFACE line. But that's Judea in Ezra 1:3. Let us go up to Jerusalem. That's the 12th line where you fall off the northern edge of the African continent into the water. Now the 11th line. So biblically, 11 and 12. These are the numbers of the land surface geographic line. Where 11 is where the pyramids, a black man's pyramid in Africa is, of the lion things of the tribe of Judah. Now 12 is where Jerusalem. So because of theological racism and the European Gentile nations takeover of Judea and Jerusalem as English pilgrims in black hats, coats, and tights, this is the dress code that the early 13 colonies from Europe in trading ships wore. As they placed the pyramids on the back of the dollar bill, they took over Africa. That's what the pyramids are. So white people took over Africa as the European Gentile nations and black hats, coats, and tights. As they invaded Judea and Jerusalem, the 11th and 12th line, that's Ezra 1st chapter 3rd verse. Right? Then they invaded the biblical North African line things of ancient Judaism. Holy land surface there. So when we go and look at this Sphinx 11 from outer space, we see a black man's face on a lion body. If we turn that negative, that whole Sphinx 11 image of my video, negative, into a negative, we see a black man's face of African Adam. That's just Genesis 2:7. Just like you go in a person's bedroom and see a black man sleeping on with his head on the pillow. If you take a cell phone, a selfie, or a snapshot of a black man sleeping in his bedroom with an afro, you say, okay, so what will appear on my cell phone if I take a photograph of a black man sleeping? You're going to see his head sideways, and the afro going to look like a C going back. So if we look at this Sphinx left from outer space of ancient Judaism, we see that the Sphinx ruled over South Africa to north. And if you draw 12 lines from South Africa to north, we will see him ruling over the original 12 African continent tribes. You follow me now? And before they was illegally renamed with theological racism by the European Gentile nation 400 years ago, under the authority of the King James of England, that sent 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars to the 11th and 12th geographic land area of Judea and Jerusalem upon the northeast African continent. So this is where the African Sphinx ruled over Genesis 2:7, normal shape of the African Adam. But we see a black man's face in the 11th line viewed from outer space upon the northeast African continent. Generated by the mountains now, remember. So, this normal-headed African Adam looked like the stone face on Mars that was seen in the 1976 Viking frame of NASA, 35 base signature, satellite imagery. A black man's face next to five pyramid. So we come back full circle now to the 11 and 12 area view northeast African continent geographic land surface line. Now we're using satellite imagery to explain what the mistranslated King James Bible and the Afro-American Church has failed to explain. So what is the satellite imagery going to tell us that the Bible is not telling us about the original 12 African continent tribe before they was illegally renamed into the 12 sons of Jacob in the book of Psalms, 105th chapter and 23rd verse. So as we look at this, we see that this northeast African face of the Sphinx, as ruled as the Sphinx 11, you turn it negative, so the northern edge of Africa, as viewed with satellite imagery from outer space, has the black man's face, just like the face in front of the Isaiah 1919 Giza pyramid, the black man's face up on the line of bottom. So that was the lion face of ancient Judaism that the white man lied to you about. But if you turn that face negative, the image of my video, you're going to see a black African Adam. Now, why is this a black African Adam of Genesis 2:7? Because it looks like a black man with an afro. Okay? Sideways face. You walk to a black man walking down the street with an afro, and you take a cell phone snapshot of his face sideways. So that's the image you see from outer space in northeast Africa, 11 geographic land surface area. Now you say, well, so we see a Sphinx and the black man's face looking like he has an afro. Right. So who was that? That's African Adam. So who's the Sphinx? He ruled over the 12 of Genesis 2:7 in the Bible. Normal shape-headed African Adam. So that means where did African Adam of Genesis 2:7 live? In Africa. So as he populated, so we draw 12 lines from South Africa to North Africa, and then view them with satellite imagery, we will see nothing but African tribes living in each of the 12 horizontal land surface lines. And which brings us back to the term in which I call the original 12 African continent tribes, in which the African Sphinx of Isaiah, in front of the Isaiah 1919 Giza pyramid ruled over, as the original black African Ethiopian, Islamic, Aramaic, DHEADED scroll speaking line Sphinx of ancient Judaism.